Welcome to the Holistic Wealth and Health Podcast. Your co-hosts, Jason Smith and Bryan Bibbo, will inspire and teach you how to prosper in your mind, body, and spirit, not just your financial life. Joining forces with field experts, Jason and Bryan are here to help you focus on what matters most in your life, living well.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to J.L. Smith Holistic Wealth and Health Podcast. I'm Bryan Bibbo, your host. And we have a special guest here today, one of my friends, colleagues, a guy I've known for many years, Gary Pelfrey. Now, Gary has had over 28 years of experience in the financial services industry. He currently holds a life and health insurance license and is well-diverse in Medicare, which is going to be our topic today, and is also a certified public notary. In his role currently, Director of Business Development, Gary is often the first person that a future client speaks to during their initial consultation. He loves talking with people, understanding their financial concerns and priorities, and helping them find a one-way path to a worry-free retirement. But we know, Gary, the reason that we're really here today is because with retirement, the topic is understanding and planning with Medicare and your financial advisor, right? And Medicare becomes a big aspect of this. A lot of people, when they think of Medicare, man, is healthcare going to bankrupt me in retirement? What does that look like? Before we get into a little bit of those bigger details, share a little bit about yourself. Where does the financial background come from and your great knowledge on Medicare?
Thank you so much, Bryan. Certainly grateful to be here today to share a bit about Medicare and a little bit about my background. Really kind of started out in the school of hard knocks way back when we used to knock on doors and look really to pretty much sell any insurance product that we could sell, and anyone that would want to talk to us, we would talk to them. But what I found in my history and in my background that has certainly been broad brush throughout my career is that front end planning called healthcare and Medicare planning could be one of the most important pieces when we speak to someone's financial plan. Because certainly if we do not have the right healthcare plan, Bryan, in retirement, then all those other great things that we help our clients with will certainly be affected by that. With out-of-pocket costs, medical bills, co-pays, deductibles, and such. It's very important that we do a great job on that front end and really make sure that we tailor the healthcare and Medicare plan to that specific individual to make sure that they're not exposed to any of those costs.
That's great. And then there's networks with doctors, all that good stuff that we'll talk a little bit. But let's talk about some timely things that are going on, right? A lot of what we're hearing is going into the year 2025 or the year 2025 that these prescription drug plans, what the people on Medicare are paying for their drugs, there's some limits there. Share with us a little bit what's going on so everyone in the audience can hear.
Absolutely. Great point and great question. In the 2025 Inflation Reduction Act, one of the biggest pieces that we're seeing an impact of improvement on is the Medicare Part D. The Medicare Part D is the prescription drug plan piece of original Medicare. Now, some folks may have a standalone prescription drug plan. Let's say if they have original Medicare and or a supplement, they'll have that standalone Part D. But some folks may have the Medicare Part C, which includes the Medicare Part D portion, along with the hospitalization and medical. So what we've seen here with the 2025 Inflation Reduction Act is a cap. So an overall max out-of-pocket cap that is being placed around the Part D, which is certainly necessary because in my 28 years of helping clients within Medicare, we've often been able to solve that Part A hospitalization piece, that Part B medical piece with encompassing either a supplement or a Part C. But what we've found is the piece that really has kind of just been all over the place as far as cost is the Part D. So now there's a $2,000 annual max cap, max out of pocket on what that Medicare beneficiary will pay for prescription drugs all in, refill costs, all out-of-pocket costs, premiums. Certainly a breath of fresh air for a lot of my clients who sometimes in the past have run into thousands of dollars of exposure around their Part D.
Yeah, you bring up a very good point. I mean, it's always been kind of that ambiguity each year. How much are the drugs going to cost? Especially some of those higher end brand name drugs that we all know. It's, hey, that could have cost you $5, $6, $7, $8,000 out of pocket. And what we're running up against, as long as the plan covers it, we're going to have that limitation where the max we pay out of pocket is $2,000. That's crucial. So while we're talking about some of those brand name drugs, there's these popular ones that we all hear about on the market. Wegovy. What are a few other ones, Gary?
Rybelsus, Ozempic, Mounjaro. All of these are semaglutide, which is the generic version of the med. But what we found is a lot of other than Medicare beneficiaries, and maybe some Medicare beneficiaries as well, really are repurposing this med for weight loss. So we have a lot of type 2 diabetics who actually require this med just to kind of keep their A1Cs in place. So we're seeing a shortage on supply, which in turn, we're seeing an increase in price over the past prior years. So that's always been an obstacle for our type 2 beneficiaries or folks who are just simply looking to get a little bit of help with the weight loss, is the cost of that med, regardless of the name brand med that you're using, certainly is much higher than that 2,000. So there'll be some immediate savings there for those folks who require that med. Just kind of great news overall for what's on the horizon for 2025.
Yeah, that's great. And as we know, there's some expensive blood thinners out there. Again, the main concept here is those higher end brand name drugs, we're going to have some cost relief here, which is very crucial. When we're new to Medicare, or it's coming against the annual enrollment period right here from October 15th to December 7th of each year, what I'm hearing you say about these prescription drug plans, do you think it's crucial that people are shopping out their prescription drug plans or their Plan Cs this year with these major changes we're talking about?
I think it's critical in 2025 to make sure that you take a look at your Part D or Part C, which encompasses the Part D as well, because there may be plans that are out there in the upcoming year that are going to be more advantageous for you as far as the savings, specifically around Part D. But certainly other areas within those plans that may make sense to take a look at as well. So great question.
Yeah, so we can get on original Medicare, which you talked about was Part A, which will cover your
hospital.
Okay, and then you can get on Medicare Part B, which will cover your
medical.
Okay, and what I understand, that covers about 80% of healthcare costs. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
So we need to find something that fills that gap, right? And that's where a supplement comes into place with a prescription drug plan or an advantage plan, which you're referencing as Part C here. Can you explain? Let's start with the supplement. Share with me a little bit about that supplement. Why should someone consider it? And what is the major differences on a supplement?
Yes. So Medicare supplement truly works hand in hand with original Medicare. So if we kind of think about how the billing will work, we can then understand how the pieces work. So if original Medicare is accepted by that hospital or that doctor, then the Medicare supplement is required to pay as well. So with some of the more comprehensive supplements, example Plan G, Plan N, you're going to have 100% coverage with original Medicare, because original Medicare is going to pay 80%. That supplement's going to pick up that other 20%. And what that really truly does is it allows that healthcare coverage through Medicare, original Medicare and Medicare supplement. It allows that to travel with you. So if you are someone in retirement that's looking to travel, maybe visit family in other states, maybe stay longer than the 3 or 4 day vacation that we've been able to do in our working years, you may want to consider a Medicare supplement, because that supplement's going to work the same way in other states as it does in the state that you reside in. So all Medicare supplements are standardized based off of that alphabet that follows the word plan. In the state of Ohio, which we reside in, there's plans A through N offered in the state of Ohio, with Plan G being the most comprehensive of those supplements. And then we come to the Medicare Advantage piece of secondary. And certainly this is an area where a lot of folks get confused, because in marketing on television and in the mailbox material that we get, Brian, a lot of times the optional supplemental benefits are more spoke to in those marketing pieces. Dental, vision, hearing, meals,
Free
transportation,
Band-Aids.
free Band-Aids, the over-the-counter benefit. When all of those things that were mentioned there, notice that there was never anything spoken around hospitalization and medical. And there's a reason. Truly, Medicare Advantage plans are in-network plans. We're all pretty familiar with those because they're very similar in how they work to our employer plans, with HMOs and PPOs also offered once we're within eligibility for Medicare. But they're truly network-based plans, Brian.
Mhm.
So in order to get coverage and receive the care, we have to go to an in-network provider or someone that's in that directory or that book in order to have coverage. And even when we do that, we still have some out-of-pocket expenses. For the most part, Part C's or Medicare Advantage are truly 80-20 plans where you have to follow the network of providers. And the Medicare Advantage plans or Part C, those do not travel with us because they're based around the zip code that we live in as far as who accepts the plans. So there's some limitations in how the coverage works when we're traveling to other states or vacationing. Certainly we'd have care in emergency situations on a Part C, but our routine care, routine office visits, things like that will not be covered with a Part C, whereas a supplement they will.
Yeah, so some major takeaways that I'm getting from you, Gary, is when people talk about Advantage plans, it's also called Part C, which encompasses some of the health care with it and the prescription drug plan.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And then a supplement, there's an alphabetical soup of supplements, right? As you just said, there's an A through N. What we didn't discuss is, does each one cover different things, I'm assuming?
Yes. Yeah. Each supplement is going to be more comprehensive in certain areas. It's important to look at, obviously, starting at the most comprehensive and then kind of going down the line as the second and third most comprehensive in order to really kind of tailor a plan around your needs.
Yeah. And then on the supplements, we're paying a monthly premium, right? We're paying a monthly amount to have that?
Yes. So one of the benefits of having 100% coverage that you can freely use anywhere, any doctor, any hospital, any state, is we're going to have a front-end loaded plan. We're going to pay a premium up front, Brian, to make sure we have no bills on the back end, and we can freely use that plan anywhere. That's truly a benefit because we're passing that 20% on to the big insurance companies who generally have deeper pockets than us versus exposing our own savings, investments, retirement accounts to those 20% back-end costs.
Now, on some of those supplements, I know you kind of said no necessarily bills on the back end there, but some of those supplements do have deductibles and maybe co-pays depending on what fits for you. But it sounds like it's a very reduced cost.
Yes, sir. Depending on how baseline you want to go with your supplement, obviously all the way down to Plan A, which is very lean in coverage.
Mm-hmm.
So not a whole lot of difference between Plan A and original Medicare. I've often said this to our clients. If we're going to have a supplement, let's have one that works very well. So that's why we often will talk about those more comprehensive plans. But if it is brought up, we'll have conversations around some of those other not as robust supplement plans. But a good takeaway here, I mentioned how paying supplement premiums up front is kind of a front end loaded type of scenario. We're paying up front to make sure we don't have any exposure. Part C or Medicare Advantage works actually in reverse. So there's savings on the front end called premium. A lot of times HMOs, there's zero premium
Advantage plans
out there. But also there are PPO plans that may require a little bit of premium. But the thinking here is with Advantage plans or Part C, you may save a little on the front end called premium, but when you need or use the insurance, you must use the directory. It must be in network. So you'll have co-pays at that family doctor, very similar to our employer plans.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have co-pays at those specialists, very similar to the employer plans. Certain deductibles around our healthcare and prescription drug plans or Part D within the Part C. And then we're going to have some bills on the back end, which can be up to 20%. depending on the procedure, even if we stay in network.
Got it. So you brought up a good concept, and a lot of us know us for having previous plans prior to Medicare, but the HMOs are covering only in-network doctors, correct?
Correct.
So you have to go within the plan provider network for the HMO.
Yes.
Got it. And what if I'm out of network on an HMO? What happens there? Let's say it's an emergency situation or it's not an emergency situation. I'm on an HMO. What am I to do, Gary?
Two pieces, and we'll kind of divide and address those separately. So obviously, as I mentioned earlier, if it's an emergency situation and you're on a Medicare Advantage plan, whether it's an HMO or a PPO, life-threatening emergency situation, you're going to be covered, regardless of where you're at. But really kind of speaking to the HMO and what that stands for, when you're on a Part C, you're no longer with original Medicare for that year. Okay, so you don't have the backing of 80/20 if you don't use the network. You're with that plan for the year. HMO stands for Health Maintenance Organization. Basically, best way to explain this is you must select a primary care physician that's in network. He's kind of your gatekeeper. If you need to see a specialist, he's going to refer you to a specialist. Hopefully that's in network. That's why it's important to always check when you get that referral as well with the carrier and the company. But ultimately, if you go outside of that network on an HMO, Brian, you're paying full tote. You're paying 100% of the cost because you did not use a network provider.
So if I'm on an HMO plan, a Medicare Advantage Plan C, and I'm in Ohio, but I am traveling in California, and it's a non-emergency situation, I could be on the hook for 20% of the bills, essentially what I'm hearing you say. That's a possibility.
It's a possibility. Yes.
Okay. Got it. So that's good on the HMOs. I appreciate that kind of dictation and detail. How about the PPOs? Like, what does that look like? I think there's in-network, out-of-network doctors. Is there a higher cost?
Yeah, great question. It's often one of the biggest confusions around the different types of Medicare Advantage or Part C. Is what is the difference in an HMO and a PPO? Most of our employer plans that we have, it says PPO on our card, right? One card system, hospital, medical, and prescription drug. We use it all at the same doctor, hospital, and pharmacy. One card system. Same way within Medicare and Medicare Advantage. But when you have a PPO, the best way I can explain the difference is this. Works the same way in network as an HMO. It's 80/20 at best if we use a network provider or hospital. But with a PPO, Preferred Provider Organization is what that stands for. If we do decide to go outside of the network or the directory or the book, sometimes that we get, we're going to be covered at that out-of-network provider, but at a reduced insurance coverage rate. So it may not be as good as 80/20 in network. It could potentially be 70/30, 60/40, or 50/50 of the overall total cost when we use an out-of-network provider with a PPO. So even when we have a PPO, boy, we try really hard to stay in network, even though we know we have that as an
higher
option.
Cost. Yeah, higher cost.
Absolutely.
No. So we joke about this, and you talked about the stuff that comes in the mail, and I hear this all the time, is the whole world knows when you're turning 65, right? You're getting inundated with the mail and everything else. Do we have to go on Medicare when we turn 65? I get that question all the time. I know the answer, but I want everyone to hear it is, am I required? What if I'm still working, Gary? Do I need to? Shed some light on when we turn 65. What do we need to do here?
So yeah, when you turn 65, which this is a great question, Brian, because one of the first questions I get, when you turn 65 and you're still working, I call it being in the catbird seat. So you have the option of either staying on that employer plan and opting out of Medicare Part B, because that employer plan essentially is serving as your Medicare Part B while you're working. So you have that option and then stay on the employer plan, or going on to Part B, A and B, and choosing a secondary within Medicare, like a Medicare supplement. So you have the choice of either or when you're working, but there's a few variables that you'll want to consider here. Obviously, one, making sure that if you're choosing a Medicare plan, you work with a professional that has the entire buffet or the entire menu, so they have the
Making me
ability
hungry.
so they have the ability to access any carrier or any plan that's out there. But you also have, if you're continuing to work, the option to stay on that employer plan and opt out of that Medicare Part B. One of the variables you'll want to weigh out there is how much of the premium the employer is paying each month for you, because certainly there's a cost analysis that needs to happen. We know we can get 100% comprehensive coverage on Medicare, but there's also costs there. So we weigh out Part B premium, the Medicare supplement premium, and then Part D costs, including premium and refill costs. That really kind of gives us that starting point for someone who's considering this decision, because most of the time, Brian, the employer is paying more of the premium than they actually think they are. So it can sometimes come down to, okay, I know I can have better coverage within original Medicare with a supplement and a Part D, but right now I've got 80-20 coverage through this PPO, and the employer is paying half the premium for me. So from an upfront cost standpoint, a lot of times they'll stay with that employer plan and opt out of Part B, but yet be Part A active. So what that does when they do choose to stay on the employer plan, and a big confusion around this is, will I be penalized when I retire and exit that employer plan? That's a great question. The answer to that question is no. You won't be penalized as long as you go through the proper steps of exiting that employer plan within the time parameters that are given around special election periods or SEPs. In this case, specifically, leaving employer coverage would be the acronym of the SEP. But you would be protected, let's say, if you work to age 68 or 70 and then finally choose to retire and now want to go on to Medicare. You're going to have those same rights under guaranteed acceptance as someone turning 65. And also, you're not going to be penalized with a late enrollment penalty because you didn't immediately enroll at age 65. Now, someone turning 65 who is retiring or maybe doesn't have access to an employer plan, certainly they're going to want to activate Medicare A and B and sit down and speak with a professional around what their secondary should be or what makes most sense for them.
Let's dissect that a little bit, just so we're all on the same page. That's a lot of data, and I greatly appreciate it. A little overwhelming, right? And I'm sure it is for everyone that comes in the office that sees you. But if I am 65, I have the option to shop this thing out, whether I'm going to go on Medicare or I'm going to stay on the employer plan and just figure out, what are the co-pays deductibles on the employer plan, what are the co-pays deductibles on the Medicare plan, and determine what am I paying out of pocket for the employer plan, what am I paying out of pocket for the Medicare plan. That's probably a fair estimate of what we look at there. But what I also heard you said, if I work till 68 or 70 years of age, I'm not penalized if I keep the employer's plan. That's accurate?
Yes, as long as you go through the proper steps when you exit that employer plan within the time parameters given. Because I always reference this, and this helps us decipher through the alphabet soup. We've all heard two P words, part and plan. There's alphabet behind both of those P words, Brian. Obviously, part tells us, or tells the mind, government. Right?
Part government, got it.
Part tells us government. Plan tells us private insurers in the state that we live in, or supplements. So plan should tell us private insurers. Anything referencing part within Medicare should tell us government.
That the government's tied to it.
Correct.
Or has some input on it.
Or has some input. That's why strategically the shopping window that we're currently in right now, October 15th through December 7th of every year, never changes, because otherwise, boy, it'd be a disaster if folks were changing all throughout the year, especially when we're involving CMS or the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services. So for their benefit, they want to make sure things are only happening during that shopping window. But remember part and plan. Part tells us government or a government section of the government healthcare system called Medicare. And then plan tells us private insurers in the state we live in, or supplements, right? The alphabet that follows either of those two P words tells us what section or what type of plan we're referring to. Supplements are standardized based off the alphabet that follows the word plan. Brian may have a Plan G with XYZ insurance company. Gary may have a Plan G with ABC insurance company. We may be paying a difference in premium and have a different name on our card for our supplement. But if we get injured or have an illness of the same variety and we go into the doctor or the hospital, we're going to be billed the same way, even if we have a different insurance company, as long as the alphabet that follows the word plan is similar. So they're standardized based off of that.
So back to that 68, 70-year-old Gary, what I'm hearing, if we do things properly, there's no penalty, but I hear that there's a penalty from other people at my local coffee shop, right? These people are telling me there's going to be a penalty, but I'm on the employer plan. Can you just elaborate? What about that penalty? How do I eliminate that? What about COBRA? How does that play in all this?
Certainly, and great question again, Brian. When we talk about someone who is working over the age of 65, the current plan that they're on is working well, or at least a good portion of the premiums being paid by the employer. So they want to take advantage of that savings around the employer perk of some of that premium getting paid or the reduction there. But what happens when we make that final decision and we want to then retire, or we make that decision, we just simply want to go on to Medicare? There are certain forms, Brian, that protect us from being penalized. These are Centers of Medicare Services forms. For example, the CMS L564 form. This is a request for employment information form that when we're approaching that, leaving that employer plan, we're going to want to get that form to our HR or our benefits department, because they're going to then need to sign off on that form saying that we've had coverage with them from age 65 till the current. Okay.
So if I get that form signed by the employer and I give that to Medicare, as long as I had credible coverage during that time frame, I won't get penalized. Is that what I hear you're saying?
Absolutely. When we speak to credible coverage, let's think about that. Because as long as we're employed over the age of 65, credible coverage means this: coverage as good as, if not better than, original Medicare.
Got it.
So that tells us if our coverage is 80-20 or better with that employer plan, that fits the criteria of as good as, if not better than, original Medicare. So that CMS L564 form is, one, going to prove that our coverage has been in place from 65 till whenever we leave or exit the employer plan, but it's also going to prove that the coverage was credible. Now, what if someone exits the employer over the age of 65 and they don't activate Medicare because they assume COBRA that's offered for 18 months gives them a window to still kind of make up their mind?
Sounds like you've been through this before. I wasn't even thinking about this, but let's hear it, Gary.
Yes, sir. So that changes things, because COBRA, even though the coverage itself is the same coverage we had with the employer plan, because we're now eligible for original Medicare. You remember what I said about as good as, if not better than, original Medicare, as long as we're working? That's the key, as long as we're working. Because when we're no longer working for that employer, we have the option of that same plan, paying full cost out of our pocket, 100% of the premium for up to 18 months, but it switches the criteria within Medicare. COBRA is not considered credible coverage when we're over the age of 65.
Oh, that's the big aha right there. Say it again.
COBRA is not considered credible coverage if we're over the age of 65 and eligible for Medicare. It's probably one of the biggest mistakes that incurs a late enrollment penalty, because one would assume because it's the same carrier, the same coverage, it must follow the same rules. The difference is once we're over 65 and eligible for Medicare.
That's huge. So if I retire at 68 and I've been on that employer plan from 65 to 68, I'm good because I had credible coverage. But if I take COBRA for 18 months till I'm 69 and a half years of age, that 18 months I wasn't on credible coverage, and I could be penalized for that time frame.
Absolutely. That's called a late enrollment penalty.
Oof.
Now, if we do this properly and we exit the employer plan properly, we get the CMS L564 signed by our HR or benefits department. We're over 65, so we probably have a Medicare card by now, Brian. It just shows Part A only active. Now we've got the Part A only active Medicare card. We don't have Part B on it yet. We've gotten that CMS L564 form signed. Now we have to accompany that form with a CMS 40B application, which is called the Medicare Part B application. So 2 forms in 2 different steps, right? We get that employment verification information form signed, and then we get that 40B, that Medicare Part B application signed. We're going to want to make copies of those, but send the wet signature forms over to our local Social Security office and let them know we're going to need Part B starting within the next month or 2.
Okay. Social Security, great transition. Let me try to stump you here. So if I'm on Social Security leading up to my 65th birthday, and forget the employer situation, just say I have insurance not through an employer, and I'm on Social Security and I'm turning 65, am I automatically enrolled in Medicare?
Great question. If we're already receiving Social Security income prior to 65, 2 things are going to happen here. Automatically, we're going to be enrolled in Medicare A and B. That's the first piece.
So automatically, you do nothing, card showing up.
Automatically, we're receiving Social Security. Automatically, we're going to get that Medicare A and B card in the mail. The other piece of this is there is a premium for Part B or Medicare Part B.
Mm-hmm.
Medicare Part A, we paid in our working years through payroll deduction and taxation, right?
Yep.
Federal, state, local, if you're in a state for local, Medicare, Social Security, right? That Medicare deduction that comes out during our working years essentially is paying for Part A when we become eligible. So there is no cost once we're eligible for Part A over the age of 65. There is a cost for Medicare Part B. So to speak to your original question here, if we're already receiving Social Security prior to 65, we're going to get that red, white, and blue Medicare card. And also, we're going to get a letter from Social Security letting us know that our Medicare Part B premium will start coming out of that Social Security check 1 month prior to our Medicare Part B effective date.
Wow. I am automatically enrolled, is what I heard you say. And since I'm already on Social Security, they're going to start taking the Part B premium directly out of the Social Security check.
Yes.
All right, let's flip the script real quick. I'm not on Social Security. I'm turning 65. Do I need to enroll if I want to be on Part A, Part B? Because again, same situation. I'm not under an employer plan. Do I need to enroll? Can I enroll in just Medicare only and not Social Security? And then if so, how do I pay for the premium?
Great question. I set you up well for that one.
I was ready for that one. I'm coming after you.
Yes. So good question. If we're turning 65 or older and we're not collecting Social Security yet, because one of my fine advisors like Bryan is really helping you maximize Social Security, and maybe we're getting that opportunity to capitalize on the 8% growth from full retirement age to age 70 within our plan. If that is the case and we want Medicare, we're going to have to let Medicare know, because we're not receiving Social Security. We're going to want to let them know we want Medicare Part A and Part B.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And billing, right? If we're not receiving Social Security, then how do we pay the Medicare Part B premium? This speaks to our private sector employees too, our STRS, SERS, OPERS. Folks that maybe have paid into the private sector and may not qualify for a benefit through Social Security. They don't have a Social Security check to deduct the Part B premium from. They fall into the same billing arrangement as folks who haven't claimed Social Security yet. They're billed quarterly for that Medicare Part B premium.
So three months worth of premium you're paying quarterly.
Yes.
And I think when you're talking about public pensions and non-covered pensions, or the STRS and OPRS people. It's a very unique set of circumstances, but I got the 2 main things. If I'm on Social Security, I'm automatically enrolled turning to 65. If I'm not on Social Security, I got to wave the flag and say, hey, enroll me. I need to get enrolled. That's great. A lot of things change in Medicare over time. And we're just seeing one with the Part D. Throughout your storied career here, how often does Medicare change? How often do these plans change?
Brian, it depends on where I'm sitting. I use different analogies of how much I change or how much they change. These things can change every year. And I can truly speak to that. 1997, let's call it, Medicare Part B premium back then was somewhere around $45 to $50.
Can we go back to then?
Yes, that would be very nice.
Sure,
just dial it back. But yeah, anything that begins with part or government, it can change even if nothing changes on our end. They can shuffle the deck on us. Truly speaks to Part C, Medicare Advantage, and Part D. The shopping window, October 15th through December 7th, that we're sitting in right now, is the only time we can look to change for the upcoming year to start the new coverage.
If we're already on it.
If we're already on it, 1/1 of the upcoming year. Really, it's critical to review the current plan that you have and that you're on to make sure that there's not something more advantageous for the upcoming year. Because even if nothing changed on our end, and the plan that we had last year worked extremely well, we can't assume it's going to work the same way into the next year, because formularies inside of the Part Ds determine what we pay in refill costs at the pharmacy, and also drugs that may be covered under the Part D last year may not be covered this year. And if we don't let CMS know otherwise that we're switching our plan with a new enrollment during the shopping window, they're going to assume that plan, we're okay with that automatically rolling over January 1. So that's specifically around Part D. Part C, here are the things that can change. Sometimes doctors will remove themselves from the network. Hospitals may remove themselves from the network. They may not take the plan next year than they took it last year. And even Part D and prescription drug costs can change because the Part D is inside the Medicare.
So to your point is, it's always worth shopping it out and looking into it, making sure you're saving the most, especially going into a year where some of these bigger legislation changes that have happened, like we said with the Inflation Reduction Act. But one of the last things I want to get at here, Gary, and people ask this all the time is, where does long-term care come into play into this, or long-term care insurance and Medicare? Where do they intertwine? And I know there's a difference between acute illnesses and chronic conditions, and that's part of it. Give us a few minutes here on that.
Certainly, long-term care is one of the biggest gaps, if not the biggest gap within original Medicare. One, because a lot of folks assume that long-term care is going to be covered by Medicare. That's not true. Now, there is some coverage within original Medicare, and it really speaks to skilled. So there's different levels of care. There's skilled, there's intermediate, and custodial care. So we truly only have 100 days of coverage within original Medicare around long-term care. 100 days? Yeah, that's nice to have that 100 days of coverage, but most of the time, we're going to spend more than 100 days if we're needing long-term care. And so where does that leave us? We're self-paying if we haven't put together a long-term care plan with our planner or with our advisor. Generally happens in our 50s or 60s because premiums are more favorable at that time. And generally, we're a bit more healthy in our 50s, 60s for the most part than we may be at 70 or 80 when we truly need the long-term care. So it's one of the biggest gaps, Brian. And we can go into statistics, but 2 of every 3 of us will spend some time in long-term care, which is about 65% of us.
Yeah, I had all 4 of my grandparents go into some sort of a long-term care facility and need care.
Yeah, and that's staggering because think of the monthly cost within long-term care after that 100 days. Generally ranges anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 a month. Multiply that by 12. If we're self-paying, we're going to deplete our estate pretty quickly. And then if we had intentions of leaving anything to the next generation, certainly that probably didn't happen because we had to spend a good bulk of our savings on long-term care. So I see it really as one of the most financial devastating pieces within a financial plan. And the major misunderstanding is that Medicare is going to cover that, or their health insurance or their supplement, which isn't the case. It's a whole new conversation that you should have with your advisor.
So a lot of what I'm hearing you say, if I have a knee surgery or a knee replacement, that's an acute illness I should heal from, right? And if I need physical therapy along the way, Medicare is going to assist with that, right? Because they know I'm going to heal from that.
Yes.
However, if my bones are breaking down and deteriorating and I'm getting dementia, that's a chronic condition. I'm in a long-term care facility. I got maybe up to 100 days because it's a chronic condition.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's crucial because, to Gary's point, having a Medicare and a healthcare plan is different than having a long-term care plan, right? But all in all, Gary, you very much enlightened us here today, and there's a lot of nuances I know we didn't get into, and this was just a little bit of what we talk about with Medicare, supplements, prescription drug plans, advantage plans. Biggest takeaway I'm getting from this is, hey, if you're on Medicare, here's the chance to make a change, especially with some of those legislative changes going into next year. But one last question I ask everyone in here, all right? If you had one message that you'd like to share with the world, what would that be?
That's a great question. If I had one message to share with the world, here's what it would be. We speak to a lot of things in our planning for our clients. And what I've found is our biggest asset is our time. Our most valuable asset is our time. So we pick and choose who and when we spend our time, our most valuable asset with.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you're surrounding yourself with people who are fans of yours and people who are going to support you and people who are going to help you versus the latter. So pick and choose who we spend our most valuable asset with, and that's our time. And I appreciate each and every one of you spending a piece of your most valuable asset here with us today, and that is your time.
Great, Gary, that was amazing. You're right. You can make more money, you can make new friends, but you can't make more time.
Absolutely.
Right? God always has a plan. Greatly appreciate you. You blessed us with your time here today, being a part of this podcast. Look forward to seeing each and every one of you on the next one. Thanks. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Holistic Wealth and Health Podcast. We hope we inspired you to make changes so you can live your best life. If you want to find out more about what we do, or if you want to have a holistic wealth and health financial plan, please call 456-833-7000. Please subscribe to the podcast and share it widely with your friends and family. Financial planning and advisory services are offered through Prosperity Capital Advisors, PCA, an SEC-registered investment advisor with its principal place of business in the state of Ohio. J.L. Smith Holistic Wealth Management and PCA are separate, non-affiliated entities. PCA does not provide tax or legal advice. Insurance and tax services offered through J.L. Smith Holistic Wealth Management are not affiliated with PCA. Information received from this podcast should not be viewed as individual investment advice. Product discussions and illustrations are hypothetical in nature and will vary based on many factors, including, but not limited to, age, health, product, insurance carrier, and product design. You should consult the insurance carrier website and policy for detailed information. For information pertaining to the registration status of PCA, please contact the firm or refer to the investment advisor public disclosure website, www.advisorinfo.sec.gov. For additional information about PCA, including fees and services, send for our disclosure statement as set forth on Form ADV from PCA using the contact information herein. Please read the disclosure statement carefully before you invest or send money.